Well, today, actually tonight, it's Colli from Colli Talks Transformative Conversations. And we're going to go, as I always say, we're going to go deep. Tonight, today, tomorrow morning, whenever you hear this, we're talking about the silent weight of shame. Yeah. So, what can I say? Welcome back, my friends. It's a deep dive into a subject that is both universal and deeply personal: shame. You know, Shame is one of those invisible threads that can weave through our lives without even knowing it's there. It hides in our body, it silences our voice, and it distorts the way we see ourselves. And it can quietly sabotage our health, our relationships, and our future. This isn't just theory for me. Shame actually has lived in my body since childhood. And for years, I didn't have words for it. I thought it was just me, maybe something wrong with who I was at the very core. But now I see shame for what it really is: not truth, but a wound. And as you know, my program is all about, you know, our wound is our greatest gift, right? So today I want to share not only what shame is, but also how it affects the body, particularly through the years that I've studied touch for health and specialized kinesiology. Shame really affects the thyroid. That's right. It can create hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism. And also, too, this is about how we can, begin to loosen the grip that shame holds on us. So let's start here. Shame is different from guilt. You might say, really? Well, guilt it says, I did something wrong. Shame says, I am wrong. I am bad. I am unworthy. The subtle difference. Well, it changes everything. Shame attacks identity. It tells us we're not enough. It tells us to hide, to silence our truth, to disconnect from others. And, because shame thrives in secrecy, it becomes a generational inheritance. Yeah, that's right. It's passed down in words unspoken, in patterns repeated, in wounds carried through families. Think about the last time you felt small, the last time you silenced yourself, the last time you questioned your worth in a room. That's shame at work. You see, since childhood, shame has allowed and has been there it's followed me like a shadow. I grew up feeling like my voice didn't matter. I learned to shrink myself to fit in, to belong, and I even gave up parts of myself so that others would feel comfortable. There were moments when the words or silences of others told me, oh, don't be too much. Don't speak too loud. Don't shine too brightly. And I carried that message through my teens, into adulthood, into relationships, into the very cells of my body. You might go, well, really, Collie? How is that possible? Well, when you think about it, shame in your teens, right? You're becoming, well, for women, we're becoming a young woman. And for me, my mom passed away at an age, well, going to actually turn from 14 to 15. So, that I had just gone through puberty and my menstrual cycle was starting. And there were a lot of questions I had, and I didn't have my mother to answer them. So I had to find this out for myself. And that in itself can cause a lot of shame because how do you find these things out when you're that age and you don't have a role model? You don't have a mother to walk you through this very tender, very special, sacred time. So those things were carried right through, as I say, into adulthood and into relationships. So it wasn't until much later when my health began to unravel, and it did. I, you know, had chronic fatigue when I was very young, but it was after my daughter was born, and there was a lot of stress in my life through my relationship with my ex-husband and just, life, right? So it wasn't until that time when my health began to unravel that I began to connect the dots. My thyroid, the gland in our throat that regulates energy, metabolism, and balance, was struggling. And I realized, of course, it was, right? I had been silencing my truth for decades. The very place in my body that is meant to speak, to express, to give voice was shutting down. And really, when I reflected back through all the different ways I know how to, my mom did the same thing. And actually, her thyroid was something that was a major issue for her with her life challenges and her weight gain, her self esteem, all these things. So I carried that message into my, you know, life, really. And that was very interesting for me because of the fact that it wasn't just me carrying my own stuff, but I was actually carrying my mom's situation. So shame had, moved from emotion to biology and from memory to metabolism. Yeah. And that's how it works. It's really amazing when you think about it. And even if you don't think about it, it's happening, right? So when we live with shame, the body holds it. Shame activates the stress response. Cortisol floods our system. Inflammation rises and hormones shift and go out of whack. And so, the thyroid, the gland that is exquisitely sensitive to stress, it takes the hit. Now, what might that look like? Well, it depends, right? It really depends. For some people, it can mean fatigue, brain fog, weight gain, hair loss, a lack of, trust, a feeling of being stuck. Like no matter what you do, your body just won't respond. And shame, literally, I mean, literally, shuts down our energy source. It convinces us we are powerless. And then the body follows suit. So think about that. Shame is not just an emotional one, it's a physical chain reaction, but also bondage. So, how do we actually begin to break free? Well, first by naming it. That's how I did it. Brene Brown in her book, Daring Greatly, she says shame cannot survive being spoken. I love that because that's why I share my story. Because the moment we bring shame into the light, its power begins to dissolve. Second, by reconnecting with the body, practices like breathwork, family constellations, which I do, or even simply placing a hand on your throat and saying, I hear you. I will not silence you anymore. And third, by remembering we're not alone. Shame isolates us and healing reconnects us. So there are actually some incredible resources and reflections that I would like to just mention to you. There are things that will give you a depth and clarity about shame. Brene Brown, Daring Greatly, and The Gifts of Imperfection. John Bradshaw's book. Oh, Healing the Shame That Binds You. A phenomenal book. Just amazing. And Gershon Kaufman, The Psychology of Shame. Now, each of these authors has shown me ways of understanding how shame operates, and more importantly, how I could transform it. And you know the beauty of all this? It does. It can. It will. It must. If you do it. So you see, my dear listener, if ever you've felt the weight of shame, know this. You're not broken. You're not wrong. You're not unworthy. And shame is not your identity. It's a wound. And remember what I say, your wound is your greatest gift. So wounds heal, and they bring to you that gift if you're willing to do the work. So the thyroid, for example, the voice, the body, they all long for truth. They long for freedom. They long for you to speak, to stand, to live fully. And as I sit here tonight, sharing once what silenced me, I want you to know you can too. So right now in this moment, take a breath. Yeah, take a breath. Put your hand on your heart. Put your hand on your heart and whisper to yourself, I am enough. I am worthy. I am free. Because shame no longer gets the final word. You do. So thank you for joining me in this tender conversation. If this touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear they are not alone. And remember, your truth is medicine. Speak it, live it, be it. And until next time, have a wonderful evening, morning, daytime, afternoon time, whichever time you're in. But remember something. I'm sending you lots and lots of love and soul hugs. Because you know what? We can do this because we are